Perseus, Athena's mortal brother, defeated the Medusa by decapitating her. The blood that flowed from the Gorgon's head became red coral. Many more or less well-founded qualities have been attributed to coral. Whereas doctors would burn it or crush it into powder or ointments, which they would prescribe for hemorrhages, colic, and even epilepsy, in other circles it quickly became the favorite object of all sorts of superstitions. Coral pendants and charms are endless in number, including uses made of it by the Catholic Church as early as the 10th century, when its substance was considered beneficial and used to carve crucifixes, rosaries, and other religious objects. Its non-rotting nature, its resistance to normal wear and tear, and the depth of mystery surrounding it made it a privileged matter for the arts of the era. Coral jewelry, inlay work, sculpture, religious and military ornaments all made their mark throughout Europe as early as the Middle Ages. Francis I, King of France, himself recommended that women of the court adorn themselves with coral. With the growth of luxury jewelry in the 18th century, coral became as valuable as the most sought-after precious stones. Whether black, red, pink, or gold, it cohabited with emeralds, rubies, and diamonds in the creation of exceptional pieces, which are still the pride and joy of the renowned jewelers on Paris's Place Vendôme. Its great popularity in Italy, however, during the 19th and 20th centuries, discouraged these same Parisian jewelers from using coral, preferring perhaps to separate themselves from the tourist jeweler image, which lowers standards in this prestigious profession. For a long time, there was doubt as to whether this organic matter, that lived under the sea at depths ranging from a few centimeters to several hundred meters, was animal, vegetable, or mineral. The sea trees, as they were once called, are animal in origin. They belong to the cnidarian branch of the very large group of sea invertebrates. There are 300 known species of hard coral, so called because of its skeleton of calcium carbonate for the coralliums, or its horn-like deposit for the gorgons. Only about a dozen of the species are considered precious and thus usable because of their hardness, their color, or their general appearance. Black, gold, bamboo, pink, blue, or red coral are generally found in warm waters. The precious varieties are sexual animals, which reproduce once or twice a year, depending on the species. Once fixed in the substrata, the eggs develop in the form of a skeleton. Growth is extremely slow, barely a few millimeters a year. This biological reality should make us more vigilant, especially with red coral, the least protected and the most exploited of all precious coral. Gathered for more than 5,000 years, 80% of red coral comes from the Mediterranean basin. Very profitable industries exist in Morocco, Italy, Spain, and Corsica. This is a dangerous situation for red coral, which, in addition to the increase of intrusive algae and various kinds of pollution, continues to suffer from the anarchy of non-regulated fishing.
Le corail actuellement est en fait une espèce en voie de disparition, en tout cas.
Coral today is a vanishing species, at least 20 to 50 meters below the surface. Actually, coral is radically overfished with a number of techniques, either by divers with oxygen tanks or objects that are dragged, like the St. Andre cross. And so coral is disappearing in the shallower waters where it was abundant in the last century.
The results of this massacre are evident on the seabed. In 1876, Algeria alone, with 259 coral fishing boats using the destructive St. Andre cross, harvested nearly 75,000 tons a year. Fishing with the cross wasn't forbidden until 1978. But not even one country has committed itself to protecting its coral. And at present, tons and tons of red coral are gathered every year. And yet, as early as 1276, Charles I of Sicily imposed limits on red coral fishing off the Sicilian coast. Today, unfortunately, the economic stakes represented by coral fishing are so important that the vague rules in existence are rarely respected. Although divers are more careful in the first 50 meters of water, they take more and more coral out further down. This dangerous situation forces small, inexperienced divers to fish in areas of new growth and remove coral which is too young.
The difficulty with red coral is its very slow growth rate. In its natural environment, annual growth is between 0.5 and 0.7 millimeters, so it's relatively slow. To get to the level of a commercial branch takes dozens of years, and that's a big problem for fishermen.
Red coral, however, is a vital necessity for Mediterranean people. Entire towns live off this coral. They are sorted and brushed. Branches which haven't had time to grow are sawed by families and used for costume jewelry and souvenirs. The waste is considerable, estimated at more than 40% of the uncut coral harvested. In Italy, especially, red coral lies in warehouses often managed by more or less mafia-organized systems. The creation of enforced quotas and a more selective choice by large jewelry houses could avoid such waste, and of course, better serve the interests of local populations and those of the coral itself. At jewelry houses like Cartier, which possesses the most beautiful collection of antique encrusted coral, great importance is attached to buying, selling, and working only the most beautiful and precious of specimens. Its specialists take months and sometimes years to find the most exceptional pieces. For the most renowned of world jewelers, coral is not merely matter, but an extraordinarily creative tool, which throughout Cartier's history has enhanced the magical harmony of the most incredible finery.
Coral is a little mysterious. Since it comes from the ocean depths, it's one of the rare organic materials which can be used for jewelry. I especially like this typically colored coral, which Cartier uses in combination with the deep green of the emerald. And I think it's this measured use of coral, which is not as rare as some precious stones, that gives the piece its beauty.
From polished coral, jewelers think about how they can make the most of even the slightest offcut, a little like a precious stone. Prices are hard to define. They depend on the quality, the size of the branch, the color, and the diameter of the base. Raw coral is negotiated at a few $100s per kilogram. Once polished and conditioned into a string of pearls, it can sell for $50,000 a kilogram for oxblood coral, for example. In the legendary workshops of the Cartier house, precious coral is skillfully blended with diamonds, rubies, or pearls to make exceptional pieces of jewelry, which will be sold throughout the world. Wealthy Japanese, Americans, and other members of the privileged class buy up the most sumptuous creations for thousands and even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
We made large pieces with very fine coral in the 1960s, in parallel with turquoise pieces, which certainly had a stylish effect. In addition, however, we wanted to demonstrate different combinations of color and matter from time to time.
Although the industrial-type production of poor-quality objects in red coral discouraged important jewelers for a long time, the tendency seems to be changing, and creators are once again turning to the pleasures of working with coral.
It's not especially difficult to work on. We treat it pretty much like other stones. Instead of using a sapphire, a ruby, or an emerald, we'll work with coral. And so it's going to be the central figure of a piece of jewelry. Now, if we add diamonds or other precious stones around it, they provide a background and really intensify the color. The pear-shaped form is always round. There's no angle, nothing to break the shape of the coral. The way we cut it always produces a piece which is pleasant to touch and to wear. So working with coral is always a pleasure. I think coral is really coming back. What it symbolizes, its colors, the fact that in a Place Vendôme jeweler's window we can see a completely natural animal matter. There's no trafficking, nothing artificial, and we really want to revive the use of this product at the Place Vendôme.
This newly refound affection is a big plus in favor of, in the short term at least, preserving these jewels of the sea. Among the great number of cnidarians, only a dozen or so are precious coral. The red is among the most famous, but other marine polyps have been sought after by man, like the antithypare or black coral. There are some magnificent specimens in the Hawaiian archipelago. Here, too, coral fishing is relentless. In Honolulu, however, conservation measures were adopted in the 11th hour to prevent the coral's extinction. A drastic plan and a private company monopoly were extremely effective.
The fishery started there in 1958, and we started studying it around 1960. So we have 40 years of records which show that the amount of coral that is harvested each year has been very stable. We're only taking out about 3,000 or 4,000 pounds a year of black coral. We have more supply than there is demand. And this is one reason why the management of the resource has been so successful.
Before fishing was regulated and exportation forbidden, except under strictly controlled special conditions, black coral had been pillaged in the waters of the Hawaiian archipelago. Like red coral, it's part of a very old commerce. Although it's almost disappeared in the Caribbean, in 1970 in Hawaii, fishing and trading black coral was regulated, long before it was officially included in Annex II of the CITES Convention in 1981. Today, it can only be captured by seasoned professionals designated by the government.
Today we had to dive, started at 200 feet and ended up at 175 feet. It's very dangerous because of the current, the strong current. The reason we dive there is because the quality of the coral is the best, because the animal has to be stronger to attach itself to the reef. It grows the strongest in the strongest current. The coral is more dense, and you get a better polish to the coral.
Present throughout the Indo-Pacific zone, black coral lives in water between 30 and 100 meters, where the current is very violent. In these dangerous conditions, divers can bring up incredible specimens measuring about 2 meters. The minimum required size is 1.22 meters high and 2.54 centimeters in diameter at the base. Any smaller black coral must be left where it is. It takes 20 years for an antipathere to reach these dimensions.
There's no poaching in this channel because people who try to dive for black coral, they find out it's quite hard to do. It's scary. Also, Maui divers won't buy from anybody else except us.
A little like Canadian forest rangers, Hawaiian coral divers employ selective cutting, a method which enables black or gold gorgons to grow again. thus facilitating the preservation of coral zones.
If you want to stay in this business for any length of time, it'll be stupid to take on the little trees. What we do is select harvesting. We just pick the bigger trees and we leave the babies to grow, and 15 to 20 years you can come back to the same spot and do another round. You can pick another round of trees.
To better observe the exploitation protocols, the Maui Divers Company, since 1973, has been using a small submarine to spot and evaluate the state of the archipelago's most precious coral. Today, these small submersibles with articulated arms enable the coral beyond the best divers' reach to be picked up.
What we have here, then, is really two fisheries here in Hawaii. A black coral fishery, which is driven by divers using scuba, and a second fishery, which is built around the use of submarines in much deeper water, maybe 400 meters. And here we only have one company, American Deep Water Engineering, and they're using two submersibles, two one-man submersibles to go down and harvest the gold and pink coral. They take about 1,000 kilo per bed, and that's the annual limit. So once they reach that 1,000 limit ceiling or absolute quota, they have to move and begin fishing in another area.
As soon as it is fished out, the black coral is dried in nature in a secret spot. The site is changed regularly. Although the calcareous red coral is fragile, the black coral, made of a scleroprotein, is at least as resistant as bamboo, which is why it can dry in the open air.
What we have here is approximately 10,000 pounds of coral, which we took about 7 months to harvest. And this is enough coral to supply Maui divers with about 2 years of material.
In Honolulu, capital of the archipelago, the finest precious coral specimens are kept in a vault inside the Maui Company Divers headquarters.
This is our coral storage room. This is where we store all our raw, uncut corals. These are bundles of raw coral. This coral was harvested by scuba divers off the island of Maui. There is about 6 months of harvest stored in this room of black coral. Over on this side of the room, we have our Hawaiian gold coral, which is the most precious of all the corals. This coral was harvested last year using a submarine and was found off the Big Island of Hawaii. This is Hawaiian pink coral, which again was harvested with a submarine last year and found in the Molokai Channel, which is between the islands of Oahu and Maui.
In the workshops, the precious coral, the black, but also the very rare gold coral, found between 400 and 1,500 meters underwater, are cut into chunks. Polished and calibrated, the coral will be shaped in order to be surrounded by gold, silver, or combined with another jewel of the sea, natural pearls. The value of the black, gold, pink, or even white coral will rise considerably once they've become magnificent pieces of jewelry. To respect the protocols, all coral worked on and sold in Hawaii does not come from the archipelago. Only 10% of black coral are fished for here annually. 90% is imported, mainly from Taiwan and the Philippines, thanks to a very American-style eco-protection system, which has obviously proven its effectiveness. Although they are far from the prices of the sumptuous pieces of coral at the Place Vendôme, those which we see here in the Maui Divers Company vault can sometimes cost more than $20,000.
This is our vault where we keep all our finished jewelry. We have approximately $7 million worth of jewelry that we put in the vault at nighttime to protect it. Today, we sell primarily 3 types of coral. The biggest category is black coral. The next largest category is pink coral. And then the rarest coral, gold coral.
Precious coral production from the Hawaiian archipelago is exclusively reserved for the local and the American market. The solid development program implemented by the government, the university, and the Maui Divers Monopoly assures the long-term preservation of black coral. Today, since supply is greater than demand, there is no longer any poaching, and there is much less pillaging of the ocean floor. Nevertheless, sales of black coral in Hawaii total $15 million a year. The local luxury industry here has intelligently come to the assistance of an endangered species without hampering trade, an example which could be applied to the Mediterranean's red coral.
Above all else, coral is a passion. It's important to realize that it's a craft and that it should remain a craft. If coral ever became an industrial profession, it wouldn't even last 2 years. It represents a delicate balance between man and the sea. It's like a farmer and his land, except that the coral gatherer harvests his produce at the bottom of the sea.
Like all coveted species which are threatened by man, a quota system and selective gathering are probably the main guarantees of the survival of these magnificent underwater gardens. And important jewelers like Cartier now realize this better than anyone.
Le corail aura toujours sa place dans le dessin.
Coral will always have its place in the designing of jewelry. We must be careful, though, that this matter does not disappear because of pollution or by overusing it for popular, low-price jewelry. It would be truly wonderful if we could succeed in protecting this species and at the same time make good use of it.
Of all precious coral, the Mediterranean red coral is still the only one not protected by the CITES Convention. Although scientists agree that this marine animal is not in danger of becoming extinct, it still might be time to take effective measures to limit fishing for it, thus permitting it to regenerate. What was done for Hawaiian black coral should be done for Mediterranean red coral. The renewed interest of quality jewelers for red and other precious coral is probably the best guarantee of its long-term protection. By demanding quality and by the price it is willing to pay for it, the luxury industry is in a position to reassure coral workers of their own future. But shouldn't these workers give this red, wild, living treasure time to flourish at the bottom of the sea?